So there's prayer. What does it do to your soul? What does the prayer itself do to your soul? Not the reception of God's love, but prayer. What does it do to your soul? Right? Yeah, if we just hands and then we'll have a mic, because I do want to get this answer. If we go to Felix and then...
Prayer opens my soul.
So it opens your soul up to...
God's love, which he wants to give me.
Yep, very good. So here's our soul, the container of a soul, and it creates an opening that was previously closed. That's the case. Previously it was closed because God didn't create you with an automatic opening to divine love. Does that make sense to you? He gave you free will, and you have to exercise that will in order to have this relationship with God. God's not forcing you into a relationship. You see, if God created your soul with an automatic opening to divine love, then he would be forcing you into a relationship with him. And God's love is so pure that he will never force you to do anything, including force you to receive his love. So God created your soul closed to God's love. Right? That's the opposite to what most people believe. Right? Your soul is created closed to God's love for one primary reason, because he gave you the gift of free will, and you can open your own soul, and so the opening of your own soul is under your control. So God created it closed, but with the potential of you opening it to reception of God's love. And your decision to make the opening not only allows God's love to flow in, but also creates an expression of love from your soul towards God. Now, this causes God great deal of joy. I don't know if you felt it yesterday, but when I stated how much joy God gets from you feeling love for God, could you feel God in that moment? Many of you had the experience of feeling God in that moment confirm what I said to you. This feeling that comes from God is, you are my child, I love you, and I love to get your love in return. Right? Because it's the one thing that God can't take from you. Mind you, God's not going to take anything from you, but God has decided to not take this love from you, but rather wait until you're ready and willing to give it. How's that breeze coming from those?
AJ, Jesus, I hear what you're saying, that we have to ask for God's love to flow in. And yet in the prayer it says, I pray you will open up my soul to the inflowing of your love. Can you talk about that, please?
Yes, remember that everything that we transmitted to Paget isn't perfectly true. It was all based around his own emotional feelings and experiences as well. So every channeling that we gave to James Paget was limited in its ability for James to understand, depending on his own emotional condition. Now, he wanted to feel like God was going to force him into doing something. And he was always, from his childhood, he grew up in a Christian faith. He had this belief system about will, about having to give up your will for God, right? And this belief system did have an impact on the channelings we gave to him. The reality is, divine love, as we said in the Paget messages to him in another message, you can read a message from myself in the Paget messages where I state categorically that divine love does not open up the soul to receive divine love. I said that prayer opens up the soul to receive divine love. So there is a direct contradiction between that, my message in the Paget messages, and the prayer itself. So we must understand that. However, God does have operations that surround us, not referring to the reception of divine love, but rather operations that God influences other people, other beings, other spirits and other people around us to open up our soul, to cause the opening of our soul. In other words, God tries to influence, through the influence of other people that are already connected to God, to give us help to decide to open up our soul. Does that make sense?
Yeah, even the operation of God's laws, I feel, are there to help open us up to God's love. So when I pray that part of the prayer, it's about, me being sensitive to everything that's in play to open me up, that God's already put there to open me up to the love, yeah.
And so God has placed her laws there to open up the soul. God has placed all of these spirit people who are now one with God to help you open up your soul and to give you truth, to help you open up your soul. God also has provided laws like the law of cause and effect, the law of attraction, and these other laws to cause the opening of your soul. So when you pray for God to open up your soul, you're actually praying to be sensitive to all of these things that are going to cause your soul to open. Does that make sense? But the reality is, divine love itself will not force itself upon your soul. Right? You have to make the choice to receive it. Prayer is your choice to receive it. Your choice to open up to receive. Now, this is the operation upon your soul that you must understand from a scientific perspective. Without prayer, your soul will not open. Therefore, it cannot receive. Without prayer towards God, your soul will not open to God and therefore cannot receive anything from God. Without prayer towards your other half, which remember is a feeling of love coming from you towards, and a desire coming from you to receive and to give love to the other half of your soul, without that prayer coming out of your soul, exercised towards your other half, you will not receive love from the other half. You can't give it without being opening to the reception. Many of you believe you can give love without receiving any, or receive some without having to give any. And love doesn't work like that.
It's an important thing you're saying about longing, isn't it? That longing is not just the desire for love, but the desire to give
it.
love. Yeah.
It's not just the desire to receive, it's the desire to give too. A longing for the relationship. You see, if I long for a relationship with God, then that opens my heart to the relationship. If I long for a relationship with my other half, this opens my heart to the relationship. Right? And remember, I said these are the two biggest relationships that are going to affect the rest of your infinite development. And in fact, without these relationships, no infinite development is possible. None. You get to a limited state of the sixth dimension, and that is it.
This is also why a lot of spirits in the sixth dimension are not with their soulmate, because they haven't developed this quality of longing. And this is why also developing your relationship with God has so many benefits in helping you develop your relationship with your soulmate, because not only are you in that relationship with God dealing with the injuries that you have inside of you that block your proper perception of your soulmate or recognition of your soulmate, but you're also developing this quality of longing, aren't you, which is so vital to that relationship. Yeah.
So let's say your soulmate comes along and does some things that you feel hurt by, right? If you still desire an openness to love, you will stay open to the hurt, right? You will stay open to the potential of this hurt. Now, with the relationship with God, we don't have to do that because God's never going to hurt us, right? So it's great when you're developing your relationship with God, when you're not receiving love in your relationship with God, you know it's not because God doesn't want to give it, it's because you're blocked to the reception. The beauty of that is that even if you feel hurt by that, you know it's your own hurt. It's not God feeling bad about you. Right? So, if you think about the prayer and the effect that prayer has on your soul, if I might just flip that over now because I want to leave that on the board. If you think about prayer and the effect prayer has on your soul, basically what we're stating is that you've got this beautiful relationship with the Creator, and here's your half of the soul. Let's say if you're a male or female, it doesn't matter. You've developed a longing to receive and give love with God, which is your method of communication and the method by which you're going to establish a relationship with God. Agreed so far? We're right with that. So we have this, I'll just put God up here so we know who we're speaking of, and this is me. So we have this flow of love that begins, and it will be dependent upon how much I'm willing to stay open to both the giving and the receiving of the love. God is perfect in giving and receiving love. I before except after C. God is a perfect giver and receiver. So if there is a blockage in the flow of this love between yourself and God, it can only be on your end. That's the only place it can be. Something in you that blocks its flow. Now, remember we talked about fear and the influence of fear. So if there's an influence of fear upon the soul, which comes with the accompanied influences of error, a lack of will, a lack of faith, a lack of truth, then of course that's going to have an effect of shutting down this feeling of love that flowing between yourself and God somehow on your end, because God does not have any of these things. God doesn't have a lack of will or a lack of faith or a lack of truth. You know, God doesn't go, oh yeah, Vlad wants a relationship with me, but do I really want a relationship with Vlad? Maybe not, He needs to let his beard grow longer, and I'll wait for some indiscriminate thing until he does something. No, God's not like that. People on the earth are they not? They'll often be picking and choosing whether they're going to have a relationship with you, but God is not like that. God desperately desires, and I don't think the word is desperate that I'm looking for, but
Deeply
intensely desires is probably the better word. Intensely desires a relationship with you. God intensely desires to receive your love. So God has an intense desire to give you her love and receive yours. And God is perfect in it. God is perfected in it. There is no blockage on God's end. God's not constipated with love. Using
Thought
Mary's
we were going
analogy,
to forget
right?
that analogy.
Everyone will remember that. I hope anyway. Every time you go to the toilet now, you remember that. So it's like we put this blockage up, which either blocks the outgoing, which is the feeling of expression of our own love for God, or it blocks the incoming, the expression of God's love for us. We are the persons who construct the blockages. Now, the difference between that and the relationship between our soulmate is that, unfortunately, because we are both often not perfected in love at the same time, then it means that both of us could be blocked towards, and probably are blocked, towards the love flowing in one or both directions. Now that becomes quite confusing, because how do you work out whether it's you that's blocked or the other person that's blocked? Well, normally what we do is we say it must be the other person. Right? That's what we normally do, isn't it? But unfortunately, often it's ourselves. The beauty of developing our relationship with God is this relationship with God will unblock us, and it's independent of God in the sense that it's not dependent on whether God's got injuries or not. Because God has no injuries with regard to the giving and receiving of love. So if there's a blockage in the relationship, it's our end. We know straight away the problem's our end. And as we repair this, as we repair these blockages in love on our end, we are automatically repairing the blockages of love towards our other half. If we're sincere, that's what will exactly occur. Now, many of us are not sincere. We have fears, and that causes us to not be sincere. And so we don't repair the blockages of love, and then we also notice that we're not receiving God's. Right? And that's because of usually our lack of sincerity to receive and give love.